Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about something that's, well, it's a real puzzle. We're diving into why some conflicts, especially the really tough ones in family court, just never seem to end. We'll be looking at some incredible work from Huntoon on a concept he calls the Symmetric Capacity Trap. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? Those fights that they just drag on forever. Maybe you've seen it happen to friends, or maybe you've even been there yourself. Every time you try to fix it, it somehow gets worse. So what's going on? Why do some conflicts feel totally, completely impossible to solve? Okay, so when professionals, like lawyers or therapists, look at these really messy custody battles, there's a common assumption. They tend to think, all right, this is a two-way street. We've got two people here, and they're both just being difficult. They're both uncooperative. And look, that sounds fair, right? It sounds neutral. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? So that brings us to our first big question. Is this just a fight gone wrong? I mean, we're so often told that both sides are equally to blame, but let's really dig into that. Is that what's happening here, or is there something much deeper, something else going on entirely? Because here's the central idea we're going to explore today. What if, in a very specific and frankly, very destructive type of case, the problem isn't mutual at all? What if the conflict isn't just about two people who can't figure out how to cooperate? The real driver is something called asymmetry. Now, this isn't about one person being good and the other bad, or smarter, or anything like that. No. It's about something much more fundamental. It's like two people have shown up to play a game, but one thinks they're playing chess, and the other thinks they're playing checkers. They're using totally different rule books. They don't even agree on what the game is. Which leads us right here, playing two different games. To really get a handle on this asymmetry, you have to realize they aren't just playing the same game badly. They are literally playing two different games with completely different objectives. Okay, so let's break down what those two different games look like. On one side, you've got the relational paradigm. This person sees the family as this living, breathing system. The whole goal is to keep it stable, to repair things when they break. For them, cooperation isn't just a nice idea, it's absolutely necessary for everything to work. And then you have the transactional paradigm. This person sees the whole thing as a series of deals, of exchanges to be won. Their goal, positional security, gaining an advantage. Cooperation is optional. And vulnerability? Oh, that's not a path to get in closer. That's a liability, a weakness to be exploited. And this quote from Huntoon just nails it. He says, when one party believes the situation is cooperative and the other believes it is competitive, the cooperative party will reliably lose ground. Think about that. It's a game theory nightmare. The person trying to cooperate keeps putting trust on the table, being open, and the other person just sees that as an opening, a weakness to take advantage of. So if they're playing totally different games, what happens when we try to help? What happens when we bring in the standard neutral tools we always use? Well, that's where things can really backfire. This is where good intentions can make a bad situation even worse. Let's take a perfect example, mediation, right? We all know what that is. It's supposed to be this fair, neutral space where people can come together and find a solution. And the whole idea of mediation is built on one giant assumption. The assumption is that if we get both people to share their information, their needs, their worries, they'll use that shared understanding to build a solution together. But this is where it all falls apart. Look at how these two people see the exact same process. The relational parent walks in thinking, okay, I'm going to explain my side, this is problem solving. But the transactional parent, they're thinking, great, tell me all your needs, tell me what you're worried about. Because for them, it's not problem solving, it's intelligence gathering. It's learning exactly where to apply pressure. And that right there is the symmetric capacity trap. The neutral tool, mediation, which was meant to help, actually ends up giving the transactional person a massive advantage. Why? Because the whole process is built on a lie. It assumes symmetry. It assumes both people are there to solve a problem, but they're not. Okay, so this sounds pretty tricky, right? How in the world are you supposed to spot this asymmetry? Well, you have to look for clues, and often those clues are hidden in plain sight, right there in the language people use. There's this brilliant concept called performative insight. This is what happens when the transactional person gets really smart. They learn the lingo. They can talk all day about cooperation, about the child's emotional needs, about attachment theory. They sound perfect. But it's an act. It's a performance. They're using these words as tools to look good, not because they actually believe or feel any of it. So you might hear something like this. Research shows that transitions during holidays can be destabilizing, and I want to protect her sense of security. Wow, right? That sounds incredibly thoughtful and well-informed. It's exactly what a mediator or a judge wants to hear. But here's the magic trick. Here's how you spot the performance. You ask a simple follow-up question. Can you give me a specific example? Tell me about a time you actually saw your daughter struggling with that. And poof, that's when it all falls apart. Suddenly, the specific details disappear. The language gets all vague and abstract. Or even better, they pivot and start blaming the other parent. That really impressive insight? There's nothing real behind it. No actual lived experience. And you can actually see these patterns in the language. The relational person tends to talk about we and us, the family system. The transactional person, it's all I and me. The relational person talks with nuance. They're looking for ways to repair things. The transactional person uses absolutes, always, never, because they're not trying to fix it, they're trying to end it, to win. So where does all this leave us? Well, it forces us to completely rethink what we mean by fairness. And that's a big deal. Because here is the fundamental, mind-bending paradox of the whole thing. Our systems are obsessed with being neutral. But the more perfectly neutral you make a process, the more you accidentally help the one person who sees neutrality as just another tool, another resource to be exploited. So what's the big takeaway? Look, this is not about picking sides. It's about being honest about what's really happening. It's about dropping the fantasy that neutral automatically means fair or symmetrical. It doesn't. Real fairness, true fairness, has to start by acknowledging that the two people in the room are playing by completely different rules. And that leaves us with a really tough but really important question. If just being neutral can actually make things worse, then what does a truly fair process even look like? That's the challenge, and it's something we absolutely have to figure out. Thanks so much for tuning in.